All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining our session today. My name is Marley Long, and I'll go ahead and we'll get things kicked off. So today we're talking about gamification and SharePoint, how to drive loyalty and adoption across your digital workplace. So just a bit of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded, so if you'd like to share this with a colleague in the next few days, we will be sending an email to everyone who signed up for the webinar, and you will automatically receive the recording. So don't worry if you have to drop off early or something. You'll definitely get the recording. You can also connect to us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @Cardiolog. And if you have any questions throughout the course of the presentation, I'll be happy to try to answer any questions towards the end. So you can send them at any time when anything comes to your mind. And if I don't get to all of the questions today, we will be answering any other questions via email. So you can just send as many questions as you have, and we'll answer them via email if we don't get through to them. You can also email us at the end of the session if you have any questions that you think of later, and I'll share all of our contact details at the end of the session as well. So just in regards for the agenda for today's webinar, so we'll start out with a very short introduction. We'll talk a little bit about Intlock and who we are. Some of you may be new here, some of you may be customers, so we'll just do a little overview of that. Then I'll jump straight into gamification and SharePoint. So where are we now with engagement in the digital workplace, and how can we use gamification methodology to drive collaboration and better productivity, smarter productivity across the spectrum? And then I'll jump into a presentation of our new product. It's called Gamify. And I do want to mention that this session is the first of a few sessions that we'll be doing. So at the end of the session, I'll give you a little bit more details on what's to come as well. And at the end, as I mentioned, we'll be going over some questions and answers. So feel free, of course, to send any of your questions throughout the presentation. So just a brief introduction about Intlock. Intlock has been around now for about 13 years, since 2005. We're based out of Boston, and over the past 13 years, we've been focused on analytics designed for SharePoint and now, of course, Office 365. Our flagship solution is Cardiolog Analytics, and it's built specifically for internal platforms, including all versions of SharePoint from 2010 to 2016, as well as SharePoint Online and Office 365. We can also track third-party tools like Yammer, Citrion, and CRM tools. And our solution is available as both an on-prem solution and a SaaS solution based on Power BI. Our goal is to help our customers constantly improve SharePoint based on how it's being used. So there are three main pillars that we talk to our customers about and that we've based our products around. So this first pillar is monitoring. So talking about the usage within SharePoint. So in-depth SharePoint analytics, insights, and usage reports. And some of you may be familiar with our analytics tool, Cardiolog Analytics. We won't be focusing on that today, but if you have any questions about analytics, we'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. The second step is really that engagement. So learning from the analytics, what our challenges are, where we can do better, or where we're succeeding, and connecting to our portal users and really understanding them and getting feedback from them and pushing them to complete specific actions. And then finally, our most important pillar is to enhance. So we want to make sure that we're constantly improving SharePoint based on these pillars. And the idea is really having actionable data that will really allow us to constantly make the platform better for the users. And just to give you another visual, so we're talking about 3 of our products that we have as of today. So as I mentioned before, Cardiolog Analytics, a full-scale analytics solution for SharePoint and Office 365, both on-prem and SaaS. Recently, we launched Cardiolog Engage. So Cardiolog Engage really kind of completes the puzzle in terms of analytics and then taking action with engagement. And it allows you to send in-app messages within SharePoint and launch really innovative campaigns to target your users and push them to complete specific actions. And what we'll be speaking about today is our new gamification product called Gamify. This is just a sneak peek of what the dashboard looks like, although we will be going into more detail later on in this session. So I want to focus now on the challenge. So what are the challenges that we face when we talk about SharePoint and Office 365? I know many of you may be coming from the administrator perspective, and you may have many challenges both from the business users, from senior management, and you know it's really important to find a tool that can help you overcome these challenges. So when we talk about gamification, which is what we're talking about today, we want to see how gamification can help us overcome these main challenges. So our first challenge is that 70% of the workplace is actively disengaged at work. And I have heard that this is even a low number, so it could potentially be even unfortunately worse than that. So this is where we really need to understand what we can do to make this number, reflective of a workplace that can be more engaged. And I know Microsoft is really focused on this right now, really focused on the digital workplace. So this is kind of where Intlock came up with this idea of using gamification methodology to approach this challenge. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go on. Another challenge is that enterprise software is still perceived as very difficult to use, and this results in low user adoption. And we know that low user adoption is obviously correlated to low digital workplace engagement. So this is another challenge that's very important to take into consideration. Another challenge is that training and the learning environment can be disconnected from real work. So employees get very excited during training, but once they return to their actual work, they have the tendency to drop off. And then we have to ask ourselves, what are we left with? Where is this constant guidance? And I think this ties back into the idea that a lot of this enterprise software that we talked about that is difficult to use, there's a lot of resistance towards SharePoint from the users, is because it hasn't been thoroughly developed for the human perspective. So we'll talk about that a little bit more, but that also comes into play when we talk about training and we talk about that need for constant guidance and constant motivation within the portal. And finally, we've seen that there is a gap in SharePoint for the ability to target end users with real-time feedback. So after some in-depth analysis, we saw that there really wasn't any sort of solution out there to be able to show the end users within the portal what their specific metrics look like. So, with Cardiolog Analytics, we focused a lot on providing metrics for our our high-level business users and our high-level SharePoint administrators, so that they can share these reports with senior management and they can make those really important business decisions. But we saw that there's really this gap also with displaying the numbers to the users and displaying the numbers in creative ways and interesting ways, so that can actually motivate the users to return to the portal if they see that they're doing really well compared to their colleagues. So how can we fix this? And our answer is gamification, and some like to call this also motivational hacking. But for now, we'll refer to this as gamification, and we'll talk a little bit more now about what is gamification exactly. So what is gamification? Gamification focuses the design of tools back to their most important element, which is the end user. So through the use of gaming mechanics and logic, gamification enables a shift towards human-focused design and can make work more fun and meaningful while at the same time really fostering collaboration, adoption, and productivity. So did you know that employees that receive regular individual recognition and rewards for doing good work are actually responsible for a 10 to 20% increase in revenue and productivity? And this was found from a Gallup research survey that was recently completed. So I found that statistic pretty interesting when we talk about different methodologies within gamification as far as recognition and rewards, and the correlation between that and increased revenue and productivity. And when we talk about games or this kind of virtual world, I think it's important for us to step back and really ask ourselves, how do we get so consumed? How many of you played games or still play games till this day? I'm sure it's many of us. And, I even remember as a kid, when, FIFA came out, and I would literally sit there for hours focusing on this game and, maybe not even get up to eat or to drink. And it makes me think, how can this level of concentration, this focus, this real motivation be mapped and leveraged into a non-gaming context? So this is a really important aspect of gamification, and really understanding how we can leverage this deep focus on sometimes even, seemingly mundane games, things that we have on our phones even, things that are very simple even. And, really understand how we can leverage this motivation into the workplace. So this brings me to another idea that I wanted to talk about briefly. So this is Octal Issus. It's a complete gamification framework. So I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with it, but it was developed by a great thinker. His name is Yu-Kai Chu, who refers to gamification as the craft of deriving all the fun and engaging elements found in games and applying them in the real world or productive activities. So again, he calls this, the human-focused design as opposed to the function-focused design. And it's a design process that optimizes for human motivation in a system as opposed to pure efficiency. So he says that most systems are usually function-focused, so designed to get a job done quickly. So maybe it's like a factory that assumes its workers will still do their jobs because they are actually just required to do so. However, human-focused design remembers that people in a system have feelings, they have insecurities, they have reasons as to why they do not want to do certain things, or maybe why they do or do not want to do certain things, and therefore optimizes their feelings, their motivations, and their engagement. So it takes these important elements of psychology and behavior into consideration. And I think, personally for me, this is why this is just such an interesting topic, and I hope it's interesting for you all as well. So most systems are usually function-focused, like we talked about before. So, really designed to get this job done quickly. But again, with these, human-focused designs, we can really achieve so much more. And the end result is the gamification framework that he came up with called Octal Issus, which is based on an octagon shape with 8 core drives that represent each side. So I'll go through these just very briefly. So the first one we see here at the top is meaning. So it's really the core drive when a player believes that he's doing something greater than himself, or that he's really building part of a community, and he devotes a lot of his time to maintaining this forum or to helping to create things for the entire community. So maybe think about Wikipedia as an example for this. For accomplishment, this is the internal drive of making progress, developing skills, and eventually overcoming challenges. So for example, we'll see a lot of this in Gamify later. So achieving points, badges, having leaderboards. So that's what this mostly focuses on. Empowerment of creativity and feedback. So for empowerment, it's when users are engaged in a creative process where they have to repeatedly figure things out and try maybe different combinations. So people not only need ways to express their creativity, but they need to be able to see the results of their creativity. So receiving feedback and responding in turn. Ownership. So this is the drive where users are motivated because they feel like they own something. So when a player feels ownership, they innately want to make sure that they own better or more. And besides being the major core drive for wanting to accumulate maybe perhaps wealth or this kind of thing, this deals with many virtual goods or virtual currencies in a system. Social influence, so this kind of speaks for itself, of course, but this drive incorporates all the social elements that drive people, including acceptance, social responses, companionship, as well as competition and envy. So when you see that, a friend is really amazing at some skill or owns something extraordinary, you definitely become driven to reach that same level. Scarcity and impatience. So this is the drive of wanting something because you simply can't have it. I think we are all familiar with this concept. So the fact that people, maybe even they can't get something right now or right away, but it motivates them to think about that all day long. And this is the core drive utilized by Facebook, for example. So when it was first started, it was first just for Harvard. And then it opened up for a few more prestigious schools and eventually at all universities. And when it finally opened up to everyone, many, many people wanted to join because they previously couldn't. Unpredictability and curiosity. So generally this is a harmless drive of wanting to find out simply what will happen next. So watching movies is a good example of this. Of course, gambling, playing the lottery are also two very, very good examples of this. And loss and avoidance as our last core drive is based upon the avoidance of something negative happening. So on a small scale, it could be to avoid losing previous work. On a larger scale, it could be to avoid admitting that what you did up to this point was useless because you're now quitting. So these are some of the main core drivers that they talk about here. And I felt like they were very interesting to share with you all, just so you can understand some of the ideas that we drew upon when we designed Gamify, and when we talk about gamification in general, to understand how we can motivate people and how we can use creative ways to motivate people, and how we can turn this into eventually a technology and to really boost productivity within the portal itself. So just wanted to share another quick fun example that I thought of gamification from the movie Monsters, Inc. actually. So remember in Disney, this Disney movie Monsters, Inc., Sullivan and Randall had a very competitive rivalry to be on top of the leaderboard. It was the scare board. So it was really apparent that tracking and real-time feedback significantly affected the monster's behavior, both in speed and focus on the job. So you can see here at the top, the scare totals, and they would all stand in front of this, scare board and see, who was getting the most scares. And they could also see, of course, within very specific regions. So it has a very, analytics feel to it, which was, I thought, very funny when I saw this movie. Okay, so we talked about gamification, we talked about motivation and how we can use gaming methodology to motivate users in games. So how can we relate this now to SharePoint? So let's kind of bring this back to SharePoint for a moment. I'm assuming this is the main reason why many of you are here. So back to this idea of leveraging gaming in a non-gaming context like SharePoint. So when you work with a technology like SharePoint, I think it's important to remember that we should approach the use of these technologies, again, from a human perspective, because at the end of the day, it's the humans that we're really seeking to motivate, to target, to engage with, and of course, to see results from. So our answer is that enterprise gamification can drive SharePoint adoption, so you can really realize the many benefits of SharePoint going beyond just a brief, adoption project. So it really lets organizations create lasting changes in behavior that will drive SharePoint adoption and maintain consistency. And I think consistency is really that key idea here, because we talk a lot about, brief SharePoint adoption projects or brief training, but having a tool that consistently, provides feedback to the users themselves and consistently motivates the users and gives them information on their own behavior and how they compare is, really crucial for consistent adoption levels. And I wanted to add also that, when we talk about fitting into the Microsoft vision for this year, so Microsoft has focused a lot on creating a dynamic digital workplace, and the ability to tap into the end user psyche to understand their needs and challenges and preferences has really become a reality with analytics innovation, and of course with now combining these analytics with gamification methodology. And Satya Nadella, Microsoft's CEO, has been very clear about his vision for Microsoft, stating that empathy is not just something nice to have, but it is the core to the innovation agenda in a company. So when organizations leverage gamification and engagement strategies in the digital workplace, they translate this idea, Nadella's vision, into reality by really using empathy to put themselves into the shoes of their users to drive a more productive workplace. This is where Gamify comes in. So as I mentioned previously, Gamify is our new product here at Intlock. So to solve some of the most SharePoint challenges, we've introduced Gamify, which is a new way to drive productivity and adoption through a gamified user experience. So it helps you to make your activities, content, and your users more visible within the internet, with an end goal of boosting SharePoint adoption and productivity. And Gamify displays message bars, web parts, and dashboards to target the users, as well as to inform administrators. So using Gamify, as I mentioned, you can drive adoption. So this is driving repeat visits to SharePoint, ensuring compliance and communication requirements are met. You can drive social engagement, creating a strong social driver for the use of SharePoint, and encouraging users to continue being active, like I mentioned before. And gamification encourages collaboration and rewards, so it really creates this network to continue this use of the tool. Using recognition to reward employees and using badges, leaderboards, and tokens. So this is, a great way to drive the adoption and contribution to SharePoint. And again, this really creates this cycle that will bring more people into SharePoint as a key component of their work habits. Tapping into user motivation, so encouraging users with targeted user dashboards and web parts, SharePoint, displaying their engagement score and how they compare to their peers and their best performing content, as well as next step suggestions and actions that they can actually take. And improving onboarding and training processes, so this is with user score updates and next step. So for example, when onboarding on the job can really tie into the use of SharePoint and can really be used to measure success or an increase in the completion of training tasks and the involvement in learning. So who can benefit from Gamify? This may be a question that you may have. So Gamify really works with both the end user and the administrator. As I mentioned before, Gamify fills that gap to really provide metrics and data to the end user. And this is something that is really new. This is something that's really revolutionary, really helping not only motivate the end user, but also informing them. So it lets them understand where they stand in terms of their engagement level, how they perform over a period of time, and how they compare to their colleagues as well. And the last thing, of course, is what steps they can take to reach the next level. This is a really important part of user motivation and gamification. And for administrators, it can really help them understand, where their end users and departments stand in terms of their engagement, how their end users and departments perform over a period of time, and how one department's engagement levels compare to another. So now I'm going to jump into a short demonstration of Gamify so that you guys can all see what it looks like. So I'm going to start now, as I just left off speaking about administrators. So this is actually our administrator dashboard that you see within our own interface within Gamify. And this report really gives the administrator an overview of how their groups and their users are performing within the organization and what their scores are. And the data is collected here through a combination of API pulling as well as JavaScript tracking. So across the top here, you can see some general metrics. So you can also filter for specific groups. So you can select which group you would like to filter for. So you can filter for your R&D, for example, and you can see that the data is dynamic and will now reflect only information for the R&D group. You can see the group rank here. So this is the average score of all the group members combined, and the higher the score, the better. So it works like points. And on the top here, you can see in general their likes over time, their user churn over time, so the number of users who became less active in the past days, weeks, or months. Their likes over time, again, so how many likes the users of the group gave over time, and their ranking over time. So you can kind of assess how the group has been ranked over time, really based on their score. You can also see here your most adopted groups, again, with just a very quick glance to see their score here. So groups, again, with the highest score, so you can simply click here. And now, again, everything is dynamic and reflecting just our HR group, who has the highest score here with 137 points. You can also see your most adopted people within your group. So for each group, you'll have all of your users, and you can see who is most adopted within that group. You can also see your average group engagement score by month, for example. So if you'd like to see, maybe perhaps you had some training within the month of December, you can check, in the month of January to see, hopefully that your user engagement increased. You can also check your user rankings, so users with the highest scores, and this is also just, again, in the list format, so it's very easy to kind of consume this data and really get this overview for the administrator. And this dashboard is great for you really getting this overview, but I think what's interesting and what we focused on the most within our Gamify product is our user dashboards and how we can actually target our users and display data for our users. So that's what I'll show you now. So we have a few ways that we can do this. So the first way that I'll show you is through a web part. So here you can see we have just an example of a typical SharePoint portal. This one has been nicely designed. And here you can see here this large square here is a web part that we've placed on top of the home page. You can place it, for example, wherever you would like. And then you can actually see, so this is for the user perspective. When they log into the SharePoint portal and they're on the home page, they get this data right here. And they can see, my peers, and they can see exactly how they rank in comparison to their peers. So they say here, okay, I'm at 76, but, my neighbor Brennan is at 133, as well as my recent achievements. So whether I'm a top 3% contributor, I had 1,000 readers a week, reading the content that I created, as well as, 5,000 that actually engage, 5,000 users that actually engaged with my content per week. And here you can see some also very general stats. So you can see how many readers they had for their content, how many helpful votes they received, how many comments they received on their content, as well as how many users actually engaged with their content as well. And this is just, a web part, so it's a very small piece that is displayed on the home page. But if a user would actually like to see, the whole user dashboard, they can actually click here, and they can click See Full Stats. And this is actually a dashboard that is specific for the user. And this is all about the individual user. So for example, you can see, it'll have the user's picture here, so you should see your picture. You can see your score, so he has a score of 17. And here we can see our different personas. So here you can see an engager. So this is, it looks like he's a top 40% engaged user. So he's rating content, liking content, and following content and people. He's a bottom 15% observer. So he's viewing content and performing searches. And a top 3% contributor, which is really great. So he's writing posts, comments, uploading documents, and more. And again, you can see my stats here. So these are the exact same stats that you saw on the web part. So you can see, of course, your readers, the total number of people who read the user's content, as well as positive ratings, comments, and engaged. You can also see my peers, so how a user performs in comparison to their teammates or company. And they can also see their recent achievements, like I mentioned here. So beyond just, top 3% contributor, you can also see they will have different badges available. For example, active for X amount of months, that they completed 1,000 searches, or that they wrote, for example, 50 posts. So they'll get a badge every time they complete these actions, as well as my best content here. So here they'll have one content piece with the most readers and one content piece, of course, with the most followers, and they'll actually be able to see who those readers were and who those followers were. As well as clicking here, top ways to boost your score. So this will actually give them an actionable dashboard that will give them, very specific actions that they can take to get to the next level, to receive the next badge, and so forth. And I want to mention, as I mentioned before, that we will be having an additional session in just a few weeks. So we'll be going way more in depth into this, actionable dashboard that I'm mentioning here, and really showing you guys exactly, what that entails and how it can be used to really help drive the users towards action and to be able to take action, directly from within the dashboard or within the portal itself. And I do want to mention also that this dashboard can be emailed to any of your users. So, for example, if you're using analytics, you can see that you have a huge list of inactive users, perhaps. So you can actually take action and, send a mass email of individual dashboards to all of these users through Gamify, and help them see that maybe they haven't been as active. They can see maybe they're more active peers, and that social pressure can really push them to complete more action within the portal, and to really make themselves look better in the portal as well, because I think we all know that it's very important to look good with that social pressure component, as well as using analytics as well to segment your most active users and to continue pushing them and giving them positive reinforcement, showing them that they have very high levels of engagement, that their score is increasing over time, and that is the kind of thing that we've seen also in technologies like Fitbit, for example. I know I'm super addicted to my Fitbit, and I check the leaderboard constantly to see how many steps I have, even though at the end of the day, it may not be the most meaningful thing, but it can really, really be a powerful, powerful tool. So this is the user dashboard, and this is where users get taken to when they click See Full Dashboard from that web part that I showed you. We also have, besides just a web part, we have this message bar here. So if you have a preference to have this message bar instead of web part, you can display this unobtrusive message bar at the top of the portal. You can also, you have different solutions for hiding it or for always showing it, for example. You can hide it here. You can place it on a timer, for example, if you'd like. So, maybe you'll have it display only for the first, 10 seconds that the user is on the, or 2 minutes that the user is on the page, depending on, what your goals are. And here you can see, again, it's some of the same similar information, but just a very easy way to display this information to the users very quickly and really help them understand, where they sit in the portal. So here you can see, of course, my rank. So you can see my group's rank. You can also highlight different individuals in the portal. So this is a really, really great way to highlight productive users in the portal and really give that recognition that we talked about earlier. So our top contributor of the week is Rachel Jones. You can also enter the top contributors list. So these are these actions that we talked about. So this is just a little snippet of the actions that you'll see in our next session on our actionable dashboard. So, for example, adding 15 posts, adding 9 comments, adding 7 documents, and that'll allow you to enter the top contributors list. And perhaps you can even send out an email, once a week with the top contributors list to really kind of push that motivation and really make everything kind of full circle, from email to the portal and so forth. And again, our top engager of the week, so recognizing Mark Brown, for example, with a score of 84. And then giving very specific actions on how, I, as an individual user, can enter that top engagers list. So that's the message bar. I think it's a really interesting way to display information to users, and it's really, first in its kind to really show a metric specifically for users and really push them to complete actions in creative and unique ways. Okay, so we'll go back now to our presentation. Okay, so just a little bit about our next session. So as I mentioned before, we will be having another session on Gamify in just a few weeks. Everyone who signed up for this webinar will be getting a invitation to the next session. So don't worry, you'll get the recording as well as the next session. So we'll be talking about dashboards for Yammer. So Gamify is integrated as well with Yammer. And that's very, very interesting because you can see really how it connects to that social component. And you can really involve, all of those social metrics into the Gamify experience. Actionable dashboards that I mentioned before, so how users can take direction directly from the dashboard. As well as we'll go a little bit more into personas, using personas as a way to motivate people as well. Okay, so I see now that we have some questions, and I'll try to get to all of the questions that I can. Again, if we don't get to any of these questions today, I'll allocate just a few minutes, but we will answer all your questions via email, so don't worry. So just give me 1 second and I'll review some questions. I do want to mention you can always visit our website at www.inlock.com. And if you'd like to see a more in-depth demonstration perhaps of our, if you're interested in analytics, if you're interested in a standalone engagement tool, or if you're interested in Gamify, we can definitely have a tailored session to really understand your business requirements. And I do want to mention that Gamify, once again, and Cardiolog Engage do stand alone as standalone solutions. So, if you're wondering whether you need Cardiolog Analytics to, implement Cardiolog Engage as well as Gamify, the answer is no, you don't. you can also use any kind of out-of-the-box analytics if you would like. So it's really up to you, but these solutions do stand alone. And feel free to join our blog. It's blog.intlock.com. We'll be blogging in the next few weeks also a lot about engagement and a lot about gamification. So if this is an interesting topic for you, I invite you to join our readers. You can also contact us. Again, if you have any questions after this session, info@intlock.com, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Okay, so I see a question now coming from John. So he's asking about, whether Gamify is available for both architectures, for both on-prem and SaaS, and the answer is yes. So Gamify is available whether you're more on-prem minded or you're really heading for the cloud. Gamify is available for both. There's no issues there. Okay, I have another question coming from Ryan, asking if there are any plans for integration with Microsoft Teams. So right now, Gamify is integrated with SharePoint and SharePoint Online, any version from 2013, 2016, SharePoint Online, as well as Yammer. And we do have tracking Microsoft Teams is on our roadmap for this year, so stay tuned. It's definitely on our roadmap, and it's definitely on our radar. So another question I got from Robert, so he's asking if the displays that I'm showing, if these are the out-of-the-box page designs that are delivered upon implementation. So yes, the answer to that is yes, these are the out-of-the-box designs that come upon implementation. So everything is very simple, very easy. If you want to customize anything, that's a question more for our development team, but I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. But it shouldn't be a problem in terms of, being able to show any of the data that we already have there. So that's definitely a conversation we can have. Okay, and Anatoly is asking, hi Marley, if we're going to use Gamify, where is it going to be hosted? Can we use it on our local servers? As I just mentioned before, it can be hosted on your server as an on-prem solution or as a SaaS solution hosted on Microsoft Azure servers. I have another question. So can Gamify work with other analytics solutions, even side-by-side and out-of-the-box analytics? So again, the answer to that is yes. As I mentioned before, it is a standalone solution. So if you're using any kind of out-of-the-box analytics or if you're using any other analytics solution, it can work with that. And I've got another question. I think I mentioned this before, but I'll answer it just again for you. So what kind of environments can you support? So we can support SharePoint Online, as I mentioned, Yammer, which we'll be talking about in our next session, and SharePoint 2013, as well as SharePoint 2016. All right, and I see another question talking about Citrion. So just to clarify that, our analytics solution, Cardiolog Analytics, tracks Citrion. Currently, Gamify is integrated just with SharePoint and with Yammer, but if you're looking to track Citrion, that's also a conversation we'd be happy to have. So definitely reach out to us, and we'll see what we can do there. Okay, so I have seen another question about, what's the value with Gamify comparing it to other tools that are out there on the market. So I think the thing that, really comes straight to my mind when we talk about Gamify, and this is, really what we thought about when we designed the product, is that there was this need for, displaying these metrics to the end users and using them in a way to motivate them. So that's really that differentiation that we see here with Gamify, and that we feel is very important and a very important component of user adoption and really thinking outside the box and really thinking, how can we revolutionize this idea? We see that this is, a consistent challenge across the board. Microsoft knows that this is a problem, and so we're really trying to think of new ways, innovative ways, and ways that we can really push productivity forward and use, that innovation to really provide solutions. Okay, and I have another question asking about the data itself, how the data is collected. I mentioned this before, but again, part of the data is collected very similarly, similar to our analytics solution, so data pulling through APIs. So that's our user groups and user profiles, as well as the JavaScript tracking code as well. Okay, so if I didn't get to your question, I'm sure to answer all of these questions email just after this session, so don't worry. And we will be sending this recording out. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And I hope to see you at our next session. I know, it's a really fascinating topic, and I hope that, you got value out of this and can really see why, we came up with Gamify and why we think it's an important solution and how it can really, hopefully help organizations to really bolster their productivity in SharePoint and really, engage with users. So thanks everyone. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.